Welcome to Accounting High.
There's a lot in here that needs to be untangled when it comes to selling, because most people, most CPAs and accountants I work with, somewhere along the line will say something to the effect of, but I don't want to be slimy. I don't want to be schmarmy. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be pushy. They will associate sales with one of those words that's negative, and they don't want to be that. And they assume that all sales is their version of something negative. Whereas, I mean, try to convince the physician who has the cure to cancer that selling it is bad and schmarmy. No. If you have the cure to cancer, if you have an important solution for people, I don't want to say it's your responsibility, but you've got to get over yourself.
May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Accounting High. It's freshman year at a brand new school. Here, we have no rules in place as we're on a mission to set our own traditions. So hang tight and learn with us as we grow. At Accounting High, you can expect to gain knowledge in a completely different way than what you may be used to, with some fun and oftentimes colorful conversations. Whether you loved high school or you hated it, here's your chance to be a part of an unforgettable experience redone. While you're here, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to us right now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And feel free to leave us a 5-star review letting us know how the school year is treating you. In addition, share this episode on social media, tagging us at Accounting High. So sit back, relax, and open your mind because class is in session.
I repeat, may I have your attention, please?
This is another public service announcement brought to you in part
by Accounting High.
The views and events expressed here are
of the next generation of accounting and tech professionals leading this space.
The events and suggestions are not to be taken lightly. Children should not partake in the listening
of this podcast.
Anything else?
Yeah.
So without further ado, introducing the star of our show,
Jason Ackerman and Scott Scarano.
We're going to have a problem here.
We have Geraldine Carter, who I believe is our first Ivy League graduate on the pod. And probably our only one ever.
Geraldine, you're pretty famous in this space. And are you an accountant?
I'm not.
yourself?
So why do you want to work with accountants?
Ooh, because there are a lot of business owners who need not just better accounting, but they need accountants who understand what that business owner is trying to create. And the accountants love doing their work, but I think where there is more room for everybody to benefit is if the accountant can better understand how the accounting fits inside what the business owner, where the business owner wants to take their business. Then everybody wins. Much bigger.
So you're in Idaho now. Did you grow up in Montana, Idaho? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Connecticut in a tiny one-stoplight town.
Oh.
Then I left the country for 10 years and then rolled around the world with my rolling duffel. And when I moved back to the U.S., I moved to Montana. And then a couple of years ago, we became pandemic refugees and moved to Idaho.
So hold on. You were 10 years. Where were you?
I went to 50 countries in all 7 continents. So depends on how much time you have for that answer to that question.
Wow.
So, okay. Why did you want to
no.
do that? What was happening? Were you escaping something? Why'd you decide to go on a 10-year journey?
Well, when I was at Cornell, I was like, I got to get out of here. And all I wanted to do was, I was watching my friends go to Wall Street and, they were engineers and they were getting recruited by JP Morgan. And I was like, that sounds awful. And I just wanted to go see the world. Yeah, so I've heard. I just wanted to go see the world. So I told my mom and not my dad, I said, as soon as I'm done, I want to lead bicycle tours in France. So I got a job doing just that. And we took our guests cycling to all the chateaus and we ate Michelin star meals and way too much foie gras and drank lots of fancy wine. And then, from there, that was like a launching pad to Southeast Asia and Patagonia and all kinds of amazing places. So, and then when after a tour or multiple tours, you'd have a lot of cash in your pocket that you couldn't declare and a bunch of free time. And I was like, well, I guess I might as well travel some more. So that's how that.
So we're
kind of
beyond
went.
the statute of limitations where the IRS we need to declare this income.
Yes, I hope so.
And Ackerman is currently on hold with the IRS. He's just going to let that go the whole episode.
Yeah, I called them
May pick
before
up
this,
or
and it
not,
was
we'll
like
see.
over a 16-minute wait, and I was like, okay, I'll just put it on hold and see what happens.
Well, if they do answer, tell them I need to talk to him too.
What was your favorite country that you visited? Or maybe not favorite, but what was like the country that you didn't think you'd like, but you ended up liking?
Ooh, I've never had that question before.
That's why we're good at what we do.
Oh my! I can't think of one because the only two that I didn't really love, I hate to name publicly because other people really like them, but I thought I was
okay. What were the two you
no,
didn't
I wouldn't
like?
even go there. Well, I was like, I didn't have a great time in Portugal, but that could have just been circumstances. And there were a lot of things to love about Morocco, but I just couldn't somehow connect to it.
How many languages do you speak?
Badly or well?
What would you consider languages?
Like
that you
if
speak?
there was like
I
a
mean, I
terrorist
guess-
situation, you could talk to them.
Ooh, that's some high-level negotiation. I don't even know if I could do that in English. But anyways, I think the answer to your question is 3. I speak French and Spanish.
Okay.
And that probably gets you like
It gets you a long way
gets you a
around the
long
world. I
way.
mean, those two, yeah, because there's been a lot of colonization that's happened. So between the two of those, plus once you speak French and Spanish, you can like combat your way through Portuguese and Italian, and then you've kind of like, you can cover a lot of.
if you went back in time, like Latin, it would help you there too.
I mean, fundamentally, yeah, I
romance.
should have, but yes. Yep. When I get my time machine, I'll make sure I.
Okay, so you travel.
So speaking of romance languages, did you find romance there? Did you were you traveling alone this whole time?
This cannot be discussed on this podcast. This is awfully incriminating.
Why not? Yeah.
We're actually not talking about
I'm
accounting.
sure there's something.
At all.
Well, you're not an accountant, so
So what's there to talk about?
right.
Yes, there. I mean, people told me that I should write a book, but you'll just have to wait for the book to come out.
Oh, this is super
Okay.
mysterious.
Okay.
I love this.
Yeah. But point taken.
So when
We'll
when
pivot
did you
from
know
That's
that?
cool.
So you're there for 10 years. When did you know it was time to come back to America?
After year 7, but it took me 3 more laps around the merry-go-round to figure out how to get off, because I would always I'd end my season with a bunch of cash and a bunch of free time, and I'd want to go travel, and then April would come around and I'd be out of cash, and I'm like, I can't move back to the US right now. I don't have any money. So I'd have to go work and make more money, which wasn't such a terrible thing. But it took me 2 full years to figure it out. And then the third one to be like, okay, when October comes and I was in Nepal, I was like, I cannot go traveling more. So I left Nepal and I flew back to the US with like a wad of cash and then settled in. And that was how I finally figured out how to move back to the US.
And
Oh wow, this is this
And-
is cool.
before we get back to the US, so like when you're traveling around, do you have like one duffel bag? Like how much are you carrying? Like what do you have on you?
Well, so let's see. I had a small place to store stuff in the south of France. And because that was mostly my home base.
It's
for
like
most of that
where
time.
you keep your like illegal passports and like the born identity,
Yep.
different cash.
And actually, and like, no kidding, one time I was leading trips over in the Dordogne. I forgot. I was only supposed to go for a week, and I had left my American passport in Carpentras, which is near Avignon. And then I got called back to the U.S. for some reason, and it didn't even occur to me. I had my French passport, and I fly back to the U.S. and I get to JFK and I try to go through customs, and the guy's like, "So where's your visa?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "I can't let you in." I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a problem." So anyways, then I told him I was born in the U.S. and everything was fine, but I had a moment of like, oh God, whoops. Travel error. Okay, but back to your question, where's my stuff?
Yeah.
How much was I traveling with? Sometimes I traveled with my bike. Sometimes I had a little trailer that I pulled behind me. When I went to Southeast Asia, it's oftentimes mostly hot there, so I only took summer clothes. So like I only had a 50-pound backpack. So it really just depended on where I was.
So I would consider you an enlightened human being. Did you find yourself at least during all of this, or did you just tap into who you already were?
Did I find myself during all of this? Goodness. It's hard to travel and not have your eyes opened in a really big way. Especially for me, going as a Western person, growing up in the US, Caucasian, my mom's French, my dad's American, going to Southeast Asia, Asia, biking for a month in China, like, by myself, not in a sort of bubble of a tour group. It would be hard to have that experience and not just have your eyes and your mind way opened. Spiritually, I didn't spend time in an ashram, so I didn't have that experience. But in terms of religion,
That was my next question. Yeah.
How much time do you spend in ashram?
Like that.
Well,
But it's hard not to be like, whoa, okay, there are a billion people here in India and there are a billion people here in China, and they all believe very different things. How can I not question what I believe? So that was really what I love so much about travel, is that it just forces you to look at what you think and what you believe and that you hold dearly and you haven't even questioned. And of course, how does that not change you as a person?
Don't you think that
yeah.
all of our world problems could be solved if people just traveled around a little bit?
Well, I might not go quite that far,
Maybe not
but
all.
I sure think it would. I do think it would
Maybe not
benefit.
all.
I mean, the thing about, so often I saw examples of all of us as people wanting the very same thing. And I was in Morocco. One of the times I was in Morocco was when the U.S. invaded Iraq. And despite all that going on, I got the red carpet rolled out for me. People were lovely and kind. And I was like, oh my God, do I tell them I'm American? And I did. And they were like, that was a long time ago and I don't want to go into it. But I would see people, families eating together and sharing meals, sharing experiences, and them just wanting better experiences for their children. And then I went to Laos and I saw the same thing. People just wanting better experiences for their children. And I saw this, I went to Cuba and I biked around in Cuba for 3 weeks. And I saw the same thing. People just want better lives for their families and their children. And we're all the same. We are the same. And yet we fight over resources, differences, ideology, and all of this. And it's just nuts. There is enough for everybody. But we get territorial, we're tribal, and we're human. So, here we are. Mm-hmm. Of course, if we traveled more, I think as a collective, we would benefit, especially Americans who have the means to do so. So that's all I'll say about that.
Well, I will love to read your book.
Yeah, this is you have to do this.
Well, it's reminding me of a book called Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty, and he left the world to go become a monk for 2 years and then came back and had this, I guess you become enlightened when you become a monk. You relinquish everything and everybody in your life, and you just tap into that center. So, I feel like that's part of traveling, and that's part of finding yourself, is leaving everything and then coming back. That's like the hero's journey, right? So, in a way, you've had the hero's journey, and now you're back.
Okay, so when you come back to the U.S., you go to Montana, and you're a CFO of a writing company?
Yeah, so what happened there was the company that I worked for, basically what we were doing as tour guides was bicycle logistics. And the piece that wove into that was when I was in China, and also in China, seeing the coal development. You cannot not see the scale of infrastructure, the speed of development that is going on in China, and the pollution is off the hook. It will make the deepest red Republican appreciate the EPA. And then being in Patagonia over 6, 8, actually 12 years probably, because I went before when I was in college. But anyways, actually seeing glaciers just deflate, right? And going back year after year and being like, oh my gosh, there's a mountain there. That used to be covered in ice. And now there's like a 600-foot mountain where there used to be ice there. And just like being able to see glaciers retreat. They don't actually retreat, they just melt. But being able to see them retreat in time, where you could actually see, the scarring, and that was no longer covered in ice, was like, and putting it together with infrastructure development and seeing the coal burning in China, just being like, oh my God. So anyways, came back to the US and was talking to a friend about this, and she's like, we need to start an event for that has to do with sustainability and climate change. And so that's how we started the company that is Climate Ride that I think you're referring to. And together, because I had the strength in the numbers and the engineering background, my role became CFO and her role was CEO of the company. And we were, within 6 years, we were managing $1 million. And so and the connection probably that you're thinking about is that, of course, we had an accountant and we had a CPA. And in my role as CFO, the first time starting a business, running a business, having all these numbers, spending so much time trying to model out where our money was going to go, how much we were going to have, when we needed it by, and not being able to get the information that I needed and the guidance that I needed, the answers to questions in a way that was reasonably prompt from either my accountant or CPA, and how much of a hindrance that was for the growth of our business, how much time it sucked away. Arguably like a lot of quality dating time, potentially. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and here I was like at my keyboard from like 8 to 10 at night in my spreadsheets modeling numbers, being like, God, if my CPA would just call me back about like, is the Social Security tax 6.2 or is it 4.2 or what's going on here, right? Because it was 2010 and all that was going on. So that's how, when I exited that company, that was a key stepping stone to where I am now.
So how do you decide that, I mean, you already talked about why, but like, how do you decide that you're going to help CPAs?
So that's a great question. I knew that I needed to niche, and because where I was something of, you could call it generalist business coach, if you will. And I knew that from both a marketing and a systems and a process standpoint that I needed to get more specific. And I had a couple of CPAs reach out to me, and I was working with them on modeling their own financials and helping them get unstuck. And it wasn't until I started working with them that I saw how much I enjoyed it, because it was really easy for us to talk the same language. Whereas with other business owners who were less comfortable in the numbers and the money, it was just harder because we had to get past so much emotional stuff about the numbers and the money before we could even talk objectively about the money. Whereas with CPAs, we were just like talking about money, throwing back reports, and all that going back and forth with ease. And I was like, oh, this is so fun. I love working with these people because we speak the same language, but we come at this problem from different perspectives. So when I saw that, I was like, I want to spend more time with these people.
And so you work with CPAs that, it says on your website, between 500 and 1.5 million, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
what's like the biggest thing that we're doing wrong?
So I think three things together. But certainly niching, being a generalist CPA is so hard because think of all the competition you have. Almost everybody else is a generalist CPA. And it hinders your ability to provide a lot of value really easily because the breadth of everything that you have to know is so wide. It's much easier once you go a mile deep. Even a client reached out to me the other day, lacking back and forth, and she's deepening her niche. And she's like, oh man, this is so great because now there's so much less that I need to know about. She's like, jokingly, she's like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Of course, she's kidding because she knows I've been riding her to get more narrow. But I think that's the primary one. The second one is learning how to price instead of billing in arrears. It's billing hourly in arrears is terrible for countless reasons that we could talk about in another episode. Learning how to price.
Oh, we've talked about.
Okay.
We're fixed price billers for a long time.
Yeah. Yes. So it's so much better for you, so much better for your clients. It incentivizes you to provide more value and get faster at your work, which is great for you and for your client. And then the third one is focusing on outcomes instead of outputs. How many business owners get their P&L and their balance sheet from their CPA or their accountant, and they just hit the keyboard shortcut Y in Gmail for archive? They don't even open the thing and look at it because they don't know how to read it. They don't know what's in it. They don't know how to look for the numbers that they need to make the decisions that they need. Equity is this bizarre concept. They can't get their head around it. Why is it, A minus E equals, whatever it is? They're like, that makes no sense. They don't think of it that way. They don't even look at the balance sheet. They don't know what decisions to make from it. So the accountant tends to deliver the P&L and the balance sheet and spike the ball, but really they're at the 40-yard line. And what they need to keep going is cash flow and forecasting, because the business owner needs certain specific numbers and not very many of them to be able to make decisions at whatever point in time they are in their business, which, may vary. They might not want the same 3 numbers every single month. You've got to talk to them, find out what decisions you're trying to make, and then work backwards and be like, okay, you need these numbers in order to make that decision. So I think because accountants and CPAs have the skill set of accounting and tax, they tend to focus on delivering that stuff instead of understanding where that stuff fits into the life of the business owner.
So
would you consider this an evolution of the profession by adding this outcome based? Because we hear this a lot. Advisory, you got to start advisoring. But what you've described isn't just this broad advisory term. This is, we have further to go to learn as business owners. When we set up and put our flag up, put our sign up, that's what a lot of us were taught is you're going to do taxes, you're going to do the books for the tax return, you're going to work basically, through the tax return all year round. At least, a lot of CPAs have been taught that. Mm-hmm. So would you consider this an evolution of the education of the profession, or is this something that everybody kind of has to figure out?
Well, what I teach and what I talk about, what I help accountants and CPAs do is not necessarily for everybody, right? What you just described, that might be a role for the right CPA who wants to do just that. The ones I work with are the ones who are soloists. They typically want to stay small, have a small team of half a dozen or less. And how they think about their problem is, I want to make more money, but there are no more hours in the week. And that's an indication that there is a flawed understanding of how money is made, because they think that in order to make money, they need more time. And that's not at all how money is made. Money doesn't come from time. Money comes from value. But in the accounting profession, there's insufficient talk about what value is, how to create it, how to bake it into your process, and many other things. And actually, this is one thing I help my clients with a lot, which is how do you talk about the numbers that you generate, the ratios that you generate, and in a way that your business owning client will respond to, right? So I'll have clients who are like, yeah, and we're going to do overhead ratios and multipliers of this and cost of acquisition that. And I'm like, wait, overhead ratios? Why would I want to buy overhead ratios? You could fill a fancy handbag with overhead ratios and I still wouldn't want to buy them. What are they? And they're like, I'm being kind of coy and playing with them, but I've got to get them to talk about what these things are in regular English and what the business outcome is, so that the business owner wants to buy the thing that is sort of built on overhead ratios, right? If you know your overhead ratios, then you know whether or not your business is profitable, and you can decide whether or not to pour more gas on the fire or hold off on pouring more gas on the fire. So helping accountants translate the ratios, the numbers that they generate into language that the rest of us understand is incredibly valuable for them, because they think that everybody understands overhead ratios, and the reality is that nobody does. So you asked, is this an evolution of the accounting profession? Really, what I hope for is a subset of accountants who do better at helping small business owners and real estate investors, but not the giant businesses, the small ones of 5 million and under that arguably form the backbone of the American economy, help them be more effective in their business by having a better handle on their financials. None of it's rocket science, but you talk to any business owner off the street and I can almost guarantee you getting what they need. And they will say, my accountant talks over me. He talks down to me. I don't understand what he's telling me. I meet with him. I just nod my head until I can get out of there. That's a shame and a waste, right? Business owners need financial guidance from their accountants. And it requires changing the business model, this whole hourly thing and all the vestige thinking, in order to free up the accountant to be able to think, to get inside the business owner's head and give the business owner what they need.
I hear a lot of Ron Baker echoes in saying, and I mean, I just, I kind of, I know that you've had him on your show. We've had him on ours, and he's sort of the father of ushering in. He's definitely how I found out about. I mean, we weren't even doing time-based billing, but I found out about value pricing through him, and just changing our entire outlook on outcomes, and focusing on outcomes, and selling outcomes, and selling, selling too. Like that's something that a lot of accountants have a hard time doing because they see it as selling.
Yes.
Selling's the bad guy.
Yes. And if I take money from you in order to make money from me, that's bad for you.
Oh, I love that.
Which is crazy.
That's the hardest thing. My team, they're like, but it costs so much. I'm like, do you not understand how to make money? That frustrates me so much.
Yeah, there's a
our
lot
team
in
too. Most accountants, yeah.
There's a lot in here that needs to be untangled when it comes to selling, because most CPAs and accountants I work with, somewhere along the line will say something to the effect of, but I don't want to be slimy. I don't want to be schmarmy. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to be pushy. They will associate sales with one of those words that's negative, and they don't want to be that. And they assume that all sales is their version of something negative. Whereas, I mean, try to convince the physician who has the cure to cancer that selling it is bad and schmarmy. No. If you have the cure to cancer, if you have an important solution for people, it is, I don't want to say it's your responsibility, but you've got to get over yourself. If you have something valuable, you're doing a disservice by withholding it because you think that sales is schmarmy. Or you're just trying to be humble. Or if people think that my thing is valuable, they will find me. Like, no, they will not. If you want your business to be successful and make money, which is presumably why you're in business, then we need to rewire your thinking on sales and have you think about it in terms of how what you do is beneficial for your client, and you want to get it in front of them so they know about it and in their hands as fast as possible because it's so good for them when they have it. You've got to get over yourself that you're somehow being more noble by thinking that sales is schmarmy, and you're like, oh, but I don't, engage in like the dirty part of business. No. Business owners are struggling and they need your expertise. So we got to get it in front of them.
I wonder why that's a common theme.
I think it's the way we're taught, because we're taught to do the accounting and the tax, and we're not taught to tell them what to do. And really that's what the client's wanting. They want us to tell them what to do.
No, they don't want you to tell them what to do. They want help making decisions, and they need to understand the numbers so they can make decisions, and they want to be able to understand. I'm so glad you said this, because a lot of accountants say this. I don't want to tell my client what to do.
No, I do.
I don't want to. You tell your clients what to do?
I try to. And I'm like, if you listen to me, this is going to be good.
He tells me what to do all the time.
So that's different. If you listen to me, if you do this, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Business owners want to understand the implications of their decisions before they make them. So they want to understand, if I decide to invest this, am I going to bottom out my bank account, or am I going to have enough to cover payroll? If I don't decide to spend this, how much potential revenue am I not going to bring in because I'm not spending 10 grand a month on Facebook ads? What am I foregoing if I choose not to spend this 10 grand on Facebook ads? They want to know the implications of their decisions before they make them. Some business owners might want to be told what to do, but I would shy away from those business owners. I want the ones who have their own minds and can decide what to do based on the information that we give them. They can make the choices that are best for them. But it's the data and the ability to be able to see more clearly what's coming that is really what they're most thirsty for.
I think it depends on the type of business owner. Because if it's if it's a doctor who owns a practice, they have it depends on what they're doing and their role. But yeah, I mean, for sure, they need to know what they're going to do. And the type of person.
You got to ask the right questions. You got to ask them the right
wanna-
questions. That's the one thing that we're never really taught too, is what questions to ask and how to ask them and how to listen, because we always want to give the answers. And that's a big problem, at least with us, is sometimes we do want to tell people what's going to happen or how to do things, but we're not asking the right questions too.
Yes. And with the right answers piece, there's a lot that also in this space needs to be untangled about the right, in air quotes, answers, because this trips accountants up in terms of being able to grow their own business, because they are so, there seems to be an indoctrination around right answers and wrong answers. And they're fearful of making decisions because what if they do the thing and it's wrong in terms of growing their business? And rather than just take it as an experiment, I'm not saying that we should like throw all caution to the wind, but if you
might be a
take
good
small
idea.
experiments in your business, well, I mean, look, if you're in business and you're completely risk averse, it might not be wise to be in business. It comes with risk. So the question is, how can I mitigate my risk, and how can I understand what risk I'm taking on and what I will do if things go a little bit off the rails. So anyways, back to this right, wrong answer thing. What we're looking for in business is to just improve, like to make a decision and get more data. And I see a lot of accountants getting stuck because they're terrified of making the wrong decision. And I that's a flawed way to look at it. It's, what am I trying to find out? What am I trying to create? What's my best guess? I'm going to come up with this hypothesis. I'm going to test it, scientific method. I'm going to see what happens. And then I'm going to iterate from there. And your business is just a series of iterations as you figure it out. And it's not as black and white as right or wrong.
I had to buy a lab coat just to continue to remind myself to experiment.
And you have a little beaker with a crucible next to you?
I don't.
That was
I
actually
don't.
my bar mitzvah theme was science. You would have fit right in.
I bet it was. I bet it was.
So when you're looking at financials of a CPA, what are you looking at? Like, what are the couple things you're looking when you get a new client? What's the first thing you zero in on?
Yeah, so I'm looking at client count. I'm looking at total revenue. I'm looking at total revenue per client. I'm looking at hours worked, and I'm looking at total hours. What's the metric? It's revenue per full-time equivalent on staff, right? So if you have 6 people, if you're making a 1.2 million and you've got 6 people compared to 1.2 million and 2 people, that's a very different picture, right? So I want to know how hard your people are working for the amount of revenue that you're bringing in. And really, we want to get that. The most people come in around 120, 150. It's rare to find a CPA or a firm that's over 200 per full-time equivalent. And if you're under 100, then for sure you're struggling and working way too hard. And it's just a signal, like it just sort of confirms, oh yeah, no wonder you're working so hard. You've got 80,000 of revenue per full-time equivalent.
That's really good. I'm trying to get to 300.
We just recorded. Yeah.
That's my goal.
Ackerman's trying to get to 300. We were just talking about our numbers last week. We just had a hard numbers episode. And
working on it.
They talked about how they just.
But you're right. That's like the one
now,
metric I care about, because that gets down to the nitty gritty. You can know tons of stuff about everything.
It's basically how much value are you providing per person.
Exactly.
Right. And in the interest of sharing, because I think it's relevant. So I haven't looked lately, but somewhere between 250 and 300
for yourself,
and for myself. And it's because of niching, being able to provide more value, looking at how do I accelerate results for my clients? How do I get them more value more quickly, which are all things that they want. And when you can do those things, then it's more valuable to them. You raise your rates, your prices go up because it's more valuable to them. And I want to be an example to them of like, look, this is what it looks like. I'm not just making this stuff up. When you go in this direction, here are the numbers to show you that when you become an expert, when you focus on more value, more quickly, better, more powerful results in less time, you can raise your rates and you make more revenue per full-time equivalent. And if you just want to be a person of one, you can do it and have a nice lifestyle. I mean, if you want to buy a $20 million yacht that you park in the Med somewhere, maybe not. but
It'd be tough.
it might be tough. But you can have a very nice, comfortable lifestyle when you focus on, but it requires focusing. I mean, unless you want to have a staff if you want to have a giant staff, it's a totally different, it's a totally different business model. But the people I talk to don't want to have a giant staff. They're accountants, they're CPAs, they're not human resource people. That's why they became accountants and CPAs. They're attracted to the numbers, not attracted to managing people. So if you want to do more accounting, more tax, and less managing of your staff, then head in the direction of expertise, and then you get to work at a higher level with higher level business owners doing higher level thinking for less actual keying in of data and less actual managing of people and their problems and their pets problems.
So when you say niching, do you mean, because I can think of it of two ways, like focusing on a specific industry and doing everything for that client in that industry, or focusing on one specific part of accounting, like I'm just going to do international tax and I'm not going to do other stuff.
Cost segs. Yeah.
So I mean both, because you can niche by vertical or you can niche by horizontal. The latter thing that you mentioned, like cost seg, subject matter, horizontal. You can niche that way, and that definitely works. What makes niching by horizontal harder is that it's harder to market. It's harder to find people, because people who need cost seg, typically real estate, so they might be easier to find. But if you go to international tax, then you have to think to yourself, okay, where do people who need international tax expertise hang out?
On the cycling trips in France.
Right, totally, right. Yes. So now you can expense your vacations.
We should have found you 20 years ago. It would have been like, have you filed your U.S. tax return? Sounds like you haven't.
But I would have been a low value client, because
you probably weren't the target market then. But
yes. But if you niche by vertical, then it's easier to find your people, because they have conferences, they listen to the same sets of podcasts, they have trade magazines and email lists and Facebook groups where they tend to hang out. So it's much easier to find them, be a fly on the wall in their Facebook groups. And I do this for accountants, right? Like, I'm a fly on the wall in all accounting groups, accounting Facebook groups, not LinkedIn groups, but I know where they hang out, like on tax Twitter. So I watch tax Twitter. And I'm like, oh, that is a great problem. It's awesome, because accountants love to go to tax Twitter to vent. So it's a great place to learn about their challenges and how they talk about their challenges, to help me figure out what would be solutions to that, what would be the most effective solutions to that. So when you niche, anyways, back to niching by vertical, it becomes much easier to find your people, because they congregate more easily. So you can do it either way, vertical or horizontal. I tend to recommend vertical. It's an easier path.
Find those watering holes. Yep. And go swim at the watering hole.
Just hang out at the watering hole. Bring your own mug.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what's your...
for sure.
So what's your plan for your business?
So my business.
Well, give us some hard numbers, because it sounds like you're ready to share those too. So let's get some numbers here.
Yeah, what numbers? What numbers do you want? I have
client count, I guess. Client count, total revenue, hours worked.
Yeah, so it's not like a CPA map to CPA at all, right? Because they have like 500 or 1,000. But I'm right in the middle of. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. But I'm right in the middle of transitioning my business model, because I was working one-on-one with CPAs and filled. Right? So I couldn't take on more one-on-one clients. And I was seeing that so many people were having the same challenges. And I would have a conversation at 9 a.m. and I would look at my calendar and I would think, oh my gosh, my next client would totally benefit from hearing this. And so would my 3 o'clock client. They'd also benefit from the same conversation. So when that started happening, that's when I was like, how do I record the high level best information that I say again and again and again, and put it in a video format and record, and so put it in a private podcast feed, and then flip the model like Khan Academy does. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but like, instead of having teachers stand up and teach Algebra 2 on the chalkboard, like, it's the same lesson every single year. Just record it, have the kids watch the video at home, and then come into the classroom and ask their questions, right? Invert the teaching. So that's what I have done. I've inverted, if you will, the teaching. It's all on video recordings, audio stripped to the private podcast. My clients listen to it it's in a mastermind format where I have 30 people in it. And then we have office hours and they come in and they ask questions about how to apply it in their business. So that's what I'm in the middle of right now. I'm piloting my mastermind. Actually, early bird registration just opened today. So I'm in the
Is there a promo code Accounting High?
There can be.
Well, what if it's sons of CPAs? Yeah.
Let's put one in the show notes. Yeah. So, I mean, early bird registration gets 10%
more
off. So, yes. So that's your 10% promo code.
That's
is
the
Accounting
family
High.
discount, 10% more.
Yeah. Well, by the time this is released, there won't be any early bird. This will be late bird.
So they can be late birds. I'll still let them in.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I love that, the whole flipping of, reversing the model one to many, right?
Yep.
Instead of one-on-one.
Yeah.
Well, when there's only one of you, you can't. Your time is limited with how you're doing stuff. So,
Yep. And I get to reach more people, and I get
Yeah.
to impact. I get to help more people, right? And the ripple effect is larger because now I'm pulling on a longer lever. But I could only do this if I was inside a niche. You cannot do this when you're a generalist. So for all the more reason, like once again, incentive to niche because you can do the same thing that I'm doing. And if you're an accountant or a CPA doing tax for real estate, you can put this stuff in videos for your people and stop having to say the same thing over and over again. You're bored anyways. You hate it too when you say the same thing for the 50th time, right? My client who's like, if I have to explain the difference between an LLC and S Corp again, she's like, oh my God, I'm going to put a fork in my hand, right? Just put it in a video and give it to the people who need it in the right way. So, yes, I'm in the middle of transitioning my business model from one-to-one to one-to-many. And this year revenue will probably be 375. And, from there it goes to like, I maintain 50% growth rates. So.
And it's just you.
Is that what you want?
It's just you.
Just me.
Yeah.
And all your
and I'm starting to bring
are
on
basically like personal expenses that we write off through the business.
Mostly, yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit admittedly of a profligate spender in my business, to perhaps my accountant's chagrin. But that's just, how I roll. And I know that there's going to be some waste and some leak, but I'm an experimenter and I'm willing to waste a little money in the interest of finding the things that work that I can really lean into the ROI.
Well, and when you
you
have
an
that revenue
mindset?
you can experiment like that. Like you have the extra cash.
Yes. Totally.
And that's what accountants don't realize either. It's like they're so like Scott, $500. Like
I cannot spend money.
Like,
I have a very hard time spending money. I think I have a scarcity mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's abundant.
I'm like, we're making I'm charging the client a lot and then do these little experiments. And if they don't work out, they don't work out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you have a cap on how much you're going to spend. You're not just like, look, I'm not
a couple million,
throwing money
like
around, right? Like I'm not.
If it's a loss, it's a loss. That's good for taxes.
I'd rather keep the
joking.
money and pay the taxes. But anyways, yes.
Yeah.
I should record a video on that. Why you need to keep the money and pay the taxes.
Better off. But there are some people who think it. They're like, I'd rather spend the money than
every
pay the taxes.
client.
Anyways.
A lot of clients.
Clients,
So.
right?
But that's part of the mindset of an accountant. Like that's another thing. I was raised to be considerate about what I spend, watch what I spend because I don't want to waste.
No, that's just they were cheap and they were charging their client too little. I think that.
No, I mean I still have that problem. I think we're charging our clients enough, and I still have a problem spending the money. Like I don't want to just waste it. I have a problem with sunk costs too. And I'm still trying to work on that.
The connection between spending and waste, right? What if you spend and it makes you 5 times more? Is that a waste? What are you wasting by not spending the money?
Yeah.
And to rethink the sort of like chain links, it sounds like we have these, in the same way that we think sales is schmarmy or dirty or gross, we tie certain words with certain meanings. And if you think that spending can potentially be wasteful, then of course you'll avoid it because nobody wants to be wasteful. So how can spending be beneficial? And just reposition the word spending in your mind. Anybody who's listening to this, right? reposition the word spending.
What are you
Breaks
going to
that
have to
chain.
buy so that you can, like the lab coat? What's that for spending for you?
Who, me?
Good question.
No, Scott's
Yeah,
very
well,
like
I think
OCD
he's, yeah.
tactile, like colors. So it has to be like, like how you would
Yeah,
teach a
it's-
preschooler. That's what we need for Ryan.
Pretty
Or-
much. My rap
Scott.
name is Little Toddler, so that's
I didn't know that. Okay, Geraldine, though, before you have
one
to
of my
go,
rap names. Yeah.
tell if you could give CPAs one piece of advice listening to this, small business CPA owners, what's your biggest piece of advice other than sign
Well, my
up for
biggest piece of
your coaching?
Yeah.
Yeah, before that, I'd say listen to my podcast, right? Because I'm not for everybody. And where I help people go isn't necessarily the path that everybody wants to take. And there's no right or wrong about that. But listen to my podcast. It's Business Strategy for CPAs, and see if you like what I talk about and the ideas I talk about. And if you don't, awesome. Go find the next podcast where somebody is like giving you what you need. But my biggest piece of, apart from that, I think the thing is to reposition how you think about the value of account. I think a lot of accountants, like you were saying earlier, and tax experts are stuck in this sort of I deliver accounting and tax and thinking that that's where the value ends. But reposition in your mind what your business owners need, because there's so much potential for you to have an enormous impact in the lives of people if you can sort of make the bounds of the lane that you're in, instead of being solid white lines, make them dotted white lines, and figure out how to apply accounting, right? Like I walked past at Cornell on the way to Riley Rob every day. I walked past the applied math building, and I was always like, what is applied math? Now, 20 years later, I understand the value of applying math to complex things like derivatives. Figure out you can apply accounting, and it's the application of accounting, not the doing of accounting, which is enormously valuable in the marketplace. So go figure out where you can apply accounting and provide enormous value for people you care about. And then it will totally change how you feel about what you do, because the nature of your contribution will expand enormously.
I love that.
I think you just called out the title of this episode, Applied Accounting.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's applied accounting.
Or the application of accounting. I haven't figured it out
No,
yet.
applied accounting.
One of those two. Yeah, I like it.
We look forward to your novel,
Apply-
which will be in bookstores soon.
Yes.
Actually, the novel might be called Applied Accounting. No, too.
I don't want to read about that. I want to read about the 10 years. I feel like
Well, we're applying it to the 10 years,
Yeah.
right? We're applying all of the business strategy that we've learned
I feel
over
like
the
some
past
crazy
10 years
happens,
to
and we need to
accounting.
know about it.
There may have been some crazy shenanigans.
Yeah, will the book be aimed at accountants to continue to expand and grow your vertical, or are you going to write a general book?
So I do have a book coming out called Zero to Subscription for Accountants. That's coming out.
Is it XERO?
No, ZERO.
Oh, you could have.
You could have done a
you
copyright
could have
infringement.
Had another double pun. Another double pun on there. Yeah.
No, I got to stay agnostic. So Zero to Subscription, ZERO, comes out in the late fall, early winter. So keep an eye out for it. If you want to know about it, the best thing to do is to get on my email list, which you can do at geraldinecarter.com. And that you will surely hear about my book coming out. And it's really, okay, so let me just tell you about it quick. In order to, if you want, you can do subscription, monthly recurring revenue, but if you want to go to, I had Brandon Hall on my podcast, and he talks about digital products and moving to membership.
Another North Carolinian.
Yes, totally. It's right behind you, out your window.
Right behind me.
And he talks about productized services and like heading in the direction of community and memberships and that kind of thing. That is a great episode to listen to. But anyways, there's recurring revenue subscription, which, you know, it will maintain your margins in the 40s, 50s, 60s. But if you want to go to margins in north of 70, you've got to go to digital products. And then the community and membership and that kind of recurring revenue is like next level. But it's very difficult to get there without niching first, figuring out your pricing, figuring out your marketing, your sales. So there's this conversation in the space around going to subscription. But what I want accountants to have before they go to subscription, you know, beyond just monthly recurring revenue for services, is all these other fundamental pieces to put in place first. So that's what Zero to Subscription is about, is like getting yourself doing the years-long, 1 year of worth of work to get yourself in position to do high margin subscription. And then, you know, 10 Years Abroad is a book that will come out once I have enough time to like sit back and dig through
It's
my
gonna be
memory and like
raunchy.
fire up my.
It's gonna involve crazy stuff that we can't.
There's
It's
some-
literally
talk about on this
literally
podcast.
the press release is just like blacked out. It's just we can't even. Say
it's all redacted.
Yeah, all redacted.
But you know what I'm going to need as a tech expert, because I've got to fire up my Palm Pilot, because that's where I wrote all my stuff when I was traveling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you don't have the charger for that?
Yeah.
You gotta figure out
Maybe
how to
we
charge
should
it.
burn
Yeah,
the
so
Palm
so
Pilot.
these things come in phases, though. Yeah, like, so changing the way you think about things and everything else, all of it comes in phases. So I like your mindset on that. I like how you
This
approach
has been
it.
great.
It's really cool. Yeah.
It's been fun to talk to you guys.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was worth the wait. We spoke earlier this year, right?
That's right.
And,
This has been on the books
finally.
for a solid 6 months.
So go to GeraldineCarter.com
Easy, yeah.
and sign up for your email list and listen to your podcasts. I'm gonna do it.
Those are the two best places.
Normally, I hate accounting podcasts, but I think yours is good. So I'm gonna.
He
No,
doesn't
God,
even listen
no.
to this
I
one.
wouldn't not listen to this. This is crap. Yours is gonna be good though.
Yep.
I listened to it.
And-
I like it. Yeah.
Actually, if you're on my list, you can get the travel stories.
Oh.
Next week coming out is the time that I ate 4 squirrels for dinner when I was in Laos.
Ooh.
Sold.
I can tell you.
That's on the podcast.
That's on the email
Yeah.
list.
I'm
Email
literally.
list, okay.
I'm on the
Email list
website
is-
right now. That's why I have
It's
dual monitors.
anti-boring.
I love that anti-boring. Well,
Yep.
get your walls filled up too, so they're anti-boring as well. Unless you're going for that empty background.
No, I'm not going for
'Cause
the
you
empty
can-
background. Here's my.
Yeah.
This is where I could be skiing 87 degrees out.
Is that a real pic?
Yeah. It's
Painting or a
stylized.
pic?
You
Oh,
can't
cool,
quite see it
cool.
with the lighting.
All right.
Yeah. So that'll be up on the wall next time I
Well,
talk
we'll
to you
hope
guys.
that one doesn't melt too. Yeah, over time, right? Can't get the melting in there. Where is that? Where was that picture?
Literally, while
well-
Scott's boring you, I signed up for your guest list. So if nothing
Nice
else
work.
came from this podcast and it was a complete waste of time, you got me. So
I got a new subscriber. Wicked.
I thought it was great.
no,
Yeah,
this was
I think
awesome.
you'll get a few out of
Geraldine,
this.
it's been amazing.
Dope.
Go talk to your podcast person, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, Ron gave you a shout out too on our episode. I believe you were the first person Ron suggested
Yeah.
that we reach out to.
He's
And
such
I
a
said
good
she's
guy.
already on the books.
I love it.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. It's been great to be with you guys.
Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank
Peace
you.
be with you.
And you too.